Hello, 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 hello. Thank you for coming back to my channel today. Thank you for coming for the first time if you're new. Today I would like to read you some more of the Raggedy Ann stories because I've really been enjoying them and I think they're great bedtime stories to fall asleep to for children or adults. And I think they're just so sweet and wholesome. And there are quite a few of them, so I'm just doing a couple at a time and really enjoying it. So the next one that we have here is called Raggedy Ann's Trip on the River. So it says, when Marcella had a tea party out in the orchard, of course all of the dolls were invited. Raggedy Ann, the Tin Soldier, the Indian Doll, and all the others, even the 4 little penny dolls in the spool box. After a lovely tea party with ginger cookies and milk, of course the dolls were very sleepy. At least Marcella thought so. So she took all except Raggedy Ann into the house and put them to bed for the afternoon nap. Then Marcella told Raggedy Ann to stay there and watch the things. As there was nothing else to do, Raggedy Ann waited for Marcella to return. And as she watched the little ants eating cookie crumbs Marcella had thrown to them, she heard all of a sudden the patter of puppy feet behind her. It was Fido. The puppy dog ran up to Raggedy Ann and twisted his head about as he looked at her. Then he put his front feet out and barked in Raggedy Ann's face. Raggedy Ann tried to look very stern, but she could not hide the broad smile painted on her face. "Oh, you want to play, do you?" the puppy dog barked as he jumped at Raggedy Ann and then jumped back again. The more Raggedy Ann smiled, the livelier Fido's antics became, until finally he caught the end of her dress and dragged her about. This was great fun for the puppy dog, but Raggedy Ann did not enjoy it. She kicked and twisted as much as she could, but the puppy dog thought Raggedy was playing. He ran out the garden gate and down the path across the meadow, every once in a while stopping and pretending he was very angry. When he pretended this, Fido would give Raggedy Ann a great shaking, making her yarn head hit the ground, ratty-tat-tat. Then he would give his head a toss and send Raggedy Ann high in the air, where she would turn over 2 or 3 times before she reached the ground. By this time, she had lost her apron, and now some of her yarn hair was coming loose. As Fido neared the brook, another puppy dog came running across the footbridge to meet him. "What have you there, Fido?" said the new puppy dog as he bounced up to Raggedy Ann. "This is Raggedy Ann," answered Fido. "She and I are having a lovely time playing." You see, Fido really thought Raggedy enjoyed being tossed around and whirled high up in the air. But of course she didn't. However, the game didn't last much longer. As Raggedy Ann hit the ground, the new puppy dog caught her dress and ran with her across the bridge, Fido barking close behind him. In the center of the bridge, Fido caught up with the new puppy dog and they had a lively tug-of-war with Raggedy. As they pulled and tugged and flopped Raggedy Ann about, somehow she fell over the side of the bridge into the water. The puppy dogs were surprised, and Fido was very sorry indeed, for he remembered how good Raggedy Ann had been to him, and how she had rescued him from the dog pound. But the current carried Raggedy Ann right along, and all Fido could do was run along the bank and bark. Now you would have thought Raggedy Ann would sink, but no. She floated nicely, for she was stuffed with clean white cotton and the water didn't soak through very quickly. After a while, the strange puppy and Fido grew tired of running along the bank, and the strange puppy scampered home over the meadow, with his tail carried guiltily over his back, as if he had nothing to be ashamed of. But Fido walked home very sorry indeed. His little heart was broken to think that he had caused Raggedy Ann to be drowned. But Raggedy Ann didn't drown, not a bit of it. In fact, she even went to sleep on the brook, for the motion of the current was very soothing as it carried her along, just like being rocked by Marcella. So sleeping peacefully, Raggedy Ann drifted along with the current until she came to a pool where she lodged against a large stone. Raggedy Ann tried to climb upon the stone, but by this time the water had thoroughly soaked through Raggedy Ann's nice, clean, white cotton stuffing, and she was so heavy she could not climb. So there she had to stay until Marcella and Daddy came along and found her. You see, they had been looking for her. They had found pieces of her apron all along the path and across the meadow where Fido and the strange puppy dog had shaken them from Raggedy Ann. So they followed the brook until they found her. When Daddy fished Raggedy Ann from the water, Marcella hugged her so tightly to her the water ran from Raggedy Ann and dripped all over Marcella's apron. But Marcella was so glad to find Raggedy Ann again, she didn't mind a bit. She just hurried home and took off all of Raggedy Ann's wet clothes and placed her on a little red chair in front of the oven door, and then brought all of the other dolls in and read a fairy tale to them while Raggedy Ann steamed and dried. When Raggedy Ann was thoroughly dry, Mama said she thought the cake must be finished, and she took from the oven a lovely chocolate cake and gave Marcella a large piece to have another tea party with. That night, when all the house was asleep, Raggedy Ann raised up in bed and said to the dolls who were still awake, "I'm so happy I don't feel a bit sleepy. Do you know, I believe the water soaked me so thoroughly my candy heart must have melted and filled my whole body, and I do not feel the least bit angry with Fido for playing with me so roughly." So all the other dolls were happy too, for happiness is very easy to catch when we love one another and are sweet all through. Oh, that's so cute. So that's that one, Raggedy Ann in the River. This next one is called Raggedy Ann and the Strange Dolls. So it says, Raggedy Ann lay just as Marcella had dropped her, all sprawled out with her rag arms and legs twisted in ungraceful attitudes. Her yarn hair was twisted and lay partly over her face, hiding one of her shoe button eyes. Raggedy gave no sign that she had heard, but lay there smiling at the ceiling. Perhaps Raggedy Ann knew that what the dolls said was true. But sometimes the truth may hurt, and this may have been the reason Raggedy Ann lay there so still. Did you ever see such an ungainly creature? I do believe it has shoe buttons for eyes, and yarn hair. Mercy, did you ever see such feet? The Dutch doll rolled off the doll sofa and said, "Mama," in his quavery voice. He was so surprised at hearing anyone speak so of beloved Raggedy Ann. Dear Raggedy Ann, she of the candy heart, whom all the dolls loved. Uncle Glenn was also very much surprised and offended. He walked up in front of the two new dolls and looked them sternly in the eyes, but he could think of nothing to say, so he pulled at his yarn mustache. Marcella had only received the two new dolls that morning. They had come in the morning mail and were presents from an aunt. Marcella had named the two new dolls Annabelle and Thomas after her aunt and uncle. Annabelle and Thomas were beautiful dolls and must have cost heaps and heaps of shiny pennies, for both were handsomely dressed and had real hair. Annabelle's hair was of a lovely shade of auburn and Thomas's was golden yellow. Annabelle was dressed in soft, lace-covered silk, and upon her head she wore a beautiful hat with long silk ribbons tied in a neat bow knot beneath her dimpled chin. Thomas was dressed in an Oliver Twist suit of dark velvet with a lace collar. Both he and Annabelle wore lovely black slippers and short stockings. They were sitting upon two of the little red doll chairs where Marcella had placed them and where they could see the other dolls. When Uncle Clem walked in front of them and pulled his mustache, they laughed outright. Tee-hee-hee, they snickered. He has holes in his knees. Quite true. Uncle Clem was made of worsted, and the moths had eaten his knees and part of his kiltie. He had a kiltie, you see, for Uncle Clem was a Scotch doll. Uncle Clem shook, but he felt so hurt he could think of nothing to say. He walked over and sat down beside Raggedy Ann and brushed her yarn hair away from her shoe-button eye. The tin soldier went over and sat beside them. "Don't you mind what they say, Raggedy," he said. "They do not know you as we do." "We don't care to know her," said Annabelle Lee, as she primped her dress. "She looks like a scarecrow." "And the soldier must have been made with a can opener," laughed Thomas. "You should be ashamed of yourselves," said the French dolly, as she stood before Annabelle and Thomas. "You will make all of us sorry that you have joined our family if you continue to poke fun at us and look down upon us. We are all happy here together, and we share in each other's adventures and happiness." Now that night Marcella did not undress the two new dolls, for she had no nighties for them. So she let them sit up in the two little red doll chairs so they would not muss their clothes. "I will make nighties for you tomorrow," she said as she kissed them good night. Then she went over and gave Raggedy Ann a good night hug. "Take good care of all my children, Raggedy," she said as she went out. Annabelle and Thomas whispered together. "Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment," said Annabelle Lee. "This Raggedy Ann seems to be a favorite with the mistress and with all the dolls." "There must be a reason," replied Thomas. "I'm beginning to feel sorry that we spoke of her looks. One really cannot help one's looks after all." Now Annabelle Lee and Thomas were very tired after their long journey, and soon they fell asleep and forgot all about the other dolls. When they were sound asleep, Raggedy Ann slipped quietly from her bed and awakened the tin soldier and Uncle Clem, and the three tiptoed to the two beautiful new dolls. They lifted them gently so as to not awaken them and carried them to Raggedy Ann's bed. Raggedy Ann tucked them in snugly and lay down upon the hard floor. The tin soldier and Uncle Clem both tried to coax Raggedy Ann into accepting their bed. They slept together, but Raggedy Ann would not hear of it. "I'm stuffed with nice soft cotton, and the hard floor does not bother me at all," said Raggedy. At daybreak the next morning, Annabelle and Thomas awakened to find themselves in Raggedy Ann's bed, and as they raised up and looked at each other, each knew how ashamed the other felt. for they knew Raggedy Ann had generously given them her bed. There Raggedy Ann lay, all sprawled out upon the hard floor, her rag arms and legs twisted in ungraceful attitudes. "How good and honest she looks," said Annabel. "It must be her shoe-button eyes." "How nicely her yarn hair falls in loops over her face," exclaimed Thomas. "I did not notice how pleasant her face looked last night." "The others seem to love her ever and ever so much," mused Annabel. "It must be because she's so kind." Both new dolls were silent for a while, thinking deeply. "How do you feel?" Thomas finally asked. "Very much ashamed of myself," answered Annabel. "And you, Thomas?" "As soon as Raggedy Ann awakens, I shall tell her just how much ashamed I am of myself, and if she can, I want her to forgive me," Thomas said. "The more I look at her, the better I like her," said Annabel. "I'm going to kiss her," said Thomas. "You'll awaken her if you do," said Annabel. But Thomas climbed out of bed and kissed Raggedy Ann on her painted cheek and smoothed her yarn hair from her rag forehead. And Annabel Lee climbed out of bed too and kissed Raggedy Ann. Then Thomas and Annabel Lee gently carried Raggedy Ann and put her in her own bed and tenderly tucked her in, and then took their seats in the 2 little red chairs. After a while, Annabel said softly to Thomas, "I feel ever and ever so much better and happier." "So do I," Thomas replied. It's like a whole lot of sunshine coming into a dark room, and I shall always try to keep it there." Fido had one fuzzy white ear sticking up over the edge of his basket, and he gave his tail a few thumps against his pillow. Raggedy Ann lay quietly in bed where Thomas and Annabel had tucked her, and as she smiled at the ceiling, her candy heart with "I love you" written on it, thrilled with contentment, for, as you have probably guessed, Raggedy Ann had not been asleep at all. That's very sweet. That's the end of that one. So there are lots of Raggedy Ann stories, and they're all so sweet. So if you're interested in reading more, I will have the link in the description box, and I have a couple other videos reading them as well. And I will probably do some more because I enjoy them so much. They're really sweet. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you really soon.